Hello and welcome to the 6th season of Murgitroyd's Innovation Talks podcasts. We're delighted you have joined us. If you have any questions, you can email us at innovation.talks@murgitroyd.com or contact us via Twitter @Murgitroyd. And please remember to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. So let's go straight into today's podcast.
Hi, I'm Keith Jones, Managing Director of Patents at Murgitroyd, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Alan Foreman, who's CEO of B-Secur. Good morning, Alan. How are you?
I'm very good, Keith. Delighted to be talking to you today.
And where are you at the moment?
I'm in the northwest of England.
You at home or are you in the office?
Yeah, under sort of semi-lockdown conditions. The business is based over in Belfast, though, where we still have all of our people working, albeit at the end of the phone, most of them. We've got about 10 people coming into the office, those people that need to use certain test equipment. But in the main, at the moment, we've got a lot of people working from home, which is working just fine.
So you've survived COVID okay? It's not been a major disruptor to the business?
The disruption has been a little bit about uncertainty in our markets. Our customers, who we sell our technology to, really had a big, horrendous period of uncertainty. And actually, one of our markets, which was automotive, has definitely taken a dent through COVID, and a lot of the big auto manufacturers are stopping some of their budgets around R&D, which has had an impact on us. But overall, everything seems to be okay. We have kept our staff. In fact, we've started to recruit again, and that is very, very pleasing. We've got 37 people today, and that's always a very tricky situation under these circumstances. But pleased to say we're starting to recruit again.
Well, that's fantastic news. Yeah, thanks for joining us today. I just want to talk a bit about B-Secur in general, but before we go on to that, you can explain to everybody about the cool technology space that you're involved in. I think it'd be interesting to hear a bit about Alan's pre-B-Secur days. So tell us a bit about your background, where you come from, what you've done in the past before you started B-Secur, 10 or so years ago, something like that?
Yeah, okay, very happy to do so. B-Secur actually started 6 years ago. Prior to that, I had just one career. Don't be mistaken, I'm no spring chicken. I left Northern Ireland in 1990, actually, and was at university over in Glasgow, engineer, computer science by background, and then went into a company called Accenture, business and technology consulting business. And I was there for nearly 20 years, just a year shy of 20 years. And I was managing director for health and life sciences for Europe. And I also had a cross-industry role related to innovation. And that was about bringing all sorts of new technology to our clients in Accenture, which were all sorts of businesses from government to retail to automotive. And that's where I enjoyed a great learning career, as I put it. And then I decided that actually a business that I had met along that journey, that maybe that was time to have a go at something new. And this was a blank piece of paper when I first met B-Secur. So that's a little bit about me.
So tell us a bit about B-Secur and the technology area that you're in, which is ECG biometrics. So how did that come about? What was the spark that brought that to your attention and made you think this is a company that I could build around this technology?
Yeah, it was by chance that I stumbled across the technology. In my past world, I was working with large companies like Microsoft, Cisco, Apple, etc. Then, this was back in 2014, and that's an important moment for the world of biometrics, because in September 14, Apple came out with the iPhone 6S, and it had a fingerprint sensor in it. Now, biometrics are not new to the world. Voice, finger, iris, facial recognition have been around for many years. You know, we saw Lenovo and HP integrating the fingerprint into laptops as many as 20 years ago, but it wasn't popular. There was a skepticism around sharing personal data. But back in 2014, there was a convergence of things happening. Pretty much everybody had an internet-connected device in the form of a smartphone by then. People had been adopting at scale the use of apps. And all these things came about when they needed passwords. And I think the statistic today is the average person in the UK has 70 passwords to get into all of their devices and applications. And that's just not fathomable and practical going forward. So biometrics became big around 2014 and 15, when tech providers started to look to more convenient and more secure ways to give people access to apps and devices. And that was the moment when I was looking at B-Secur. So let me tell you about B-Secur for a moment. The genesis of it is that everyone's heartbeat is different. That was discovered by medics about 20 years ago in the early 2000s. And that was a problem for medics because in medicine, we try to replicate people's heartbeat, pacemakers, and the likes. However, that is not the natural pattern of what happens from the heartbeat. And an entrepreneur in Belfast took the opportunity to patent that idea way back in the day and didn't really understand the full potential of it. And then I was facing an opportunity in 2014 to look at ECG as potentially the next biometric beyond traditional biometrics of fingerprint, etc. So there was a bit of an idea. I phoned around a few folks in the technology world and they looked at it and said, if this is true, then it has got big potential because there are limitations to traditional biometric, environmental limitations such as light or sound or even heat in the air or humidity and dampness if you're using fingerprint and so on and so forth. So there's an opportunity to say, what has everybody in the world got? And they all have a heartbeat, certainly everybody that's alive. And could we use that? Well, you could if you used advanced electronics, which were only also coming available about this time when I looked at it. So that was the genesis, the idea that everybody's heartbeat is different.
It still astounds me that everybody has a unique heartbeat. I first found that out when I first spoke to you 2 or 3 years ago, and it's an astonishing fact. And I think a lot of people, will find that astonishing. But it's incredible that you can take one single heartbeat, and from that, you can effectively identify somebody, and and only one as well, which is even more incredible. But that's the core technology around which the whole proposition of B-Secure is built.
Yeah, well, to explain it, Science 101 on ECG. It's actually the ECG electrocardiogram is the electrical signal that is produced from a heartbeat. It's actually a muscle in the heart that generates a signal about every second in every human being to then create a spark, which creates the muscles to contract and expand and so on and so forth. And it's that electrical signal that we're picking up on. So we're signal processing experts around that. And it's only been possible in the world of higher level computing power that can be done on ever smaller devices and chipsets that's enabled us to do this. So this was a coming together of a number of things, not just an idea, not just a fact that every one of your heartbeats is different to mine, but each one of your individual heartbeats is slightly different in of itself. So you have an underlying pattern that is with you for a good period of your life. It changes over a number of years, but broadly speaking, it's the same pattern for Keith. It's a similar underlying pattern for Alan, but they're slightly different. And that in itself, those variances make for great opportunity. If you look at security and authentication, the fact that every one of your heartbeats is slightly different really helps as an anti-spoofing opportunity, which things like fingerprint can't achieve because your fingerprint is the same as it will be tomorrow and so on and so forth. So that's part of the tech, that's part of the uniqueness of it. However, here's the really interesting thing as we got into this, and to give you the context, we employ scientists, biomedical scientists, medics, electronic engineers, data scientists. And as we got into it about 2 years in, even though it started as an authentication play and uniquely identifying everybody, we discovered at the very same time of capturing this signal, we could tell live in real time how well you are, how healthy you are, and start to go into this world on the wellness side. I call it the Fitbit 2.0 phenomenon, which is taking what Fitbit made popular a number of years ago. We're all counting our steps or watching how much exercise we do. There's a new generation of that wellness coming around. And then furthermore, the only way truly to get an ECG has been going into a hospital environment using an extremely expensive machine. I've been placed on that for 10 minutes on a 12-lead wet electrode system. It's not very convenient. It's not good for many patients who would be agitated by that type of environment. And what we've perfected is actually capturing the same signal at medical grade in a single lead dry electrode system. So I can now do that when you're holding the steering wheel of your car. I can capture the same medical grade ECG from a wrist-worn device like a smartwatch or a fitness band. I can even capture it from a t-shirt which we've built in prototype with a number of companies around the world. And if you then start to think about that, I can reach everybody on the planet. If I put clothing on them, if I can put a device on them, if I can integrate into their day-to-day business, I can capture the ECG signal and start to proactively manage how they live their life. So that's the interesting stuff. Does that make sense, Keith?
Yeah, and as I understand it, something that's very topical, not least because we're in the middle of this COVID pandemic and the anxiety brought about by that is front and centre, that stress management is a big aspect of what you're looking at. So you can take these ECGs and you can use that as part of a stress management program as well, which is, extremely topical.
Yeah, that's a good point, Keith. Prior to COVID, the cost of workplace stress management in the US alone was phenomenal. It was in the billions, and the cost was borne by individuals. It was borne by employers. It was borne by insurance companies and health plans. And that was because we've got this always on scenario in the world today. We don't stop at 5 o'clock and give up. We're watching our email first thing in the morning. When we wake up, we're looking at devices late into the evening. And that's actually putting a lot of pressure on people around the world. So are many other things. So it was always a big problem. Stress and anxiety. It wasn't particularly well understood or very popular because it is essentially related to mental illness. But that has become something that people are much more open at talking about. And long-term physiological stress, this isn't just the moment where you get a moment of stress of stepping off the pavement in a car, you have a near scrape, but this is long-term prolonged anxiety related to financial concerns, perhaps worry about work or environmental things or politics or whatever it might be. That long-term physiological stress has been proven to cause a number of illnesses, including some cancers. So it's a big problem. Lo and behold, fast forward and COVID arrives upon us. And I think we all know the stories about the conditions that people are experiencing and starting to feel even more anxiety and stress. I think in the UK alone, incidents of stress that are reported are double since the start of the pandemic, and it's becoming a real problem. And this is just the known incidents. So what's really cool for B-Secur is maybe, just maybe, we can help people in that. And what we can do is on a simple smartwatch, by monitoring your ECG, we see the changing shape of your heart, and we see the opportunity to understand that you're about to get stressed or you're experiencing long-term stress, and we can report on that. So there's a number that's been put out by the World Health Organization that says that 90% of employees in the US want their employer to tell them on a more regular basis if they're stressed or too stressed to be working, and maybe, just maybe, they need to take a day off or need to manage their workload a little bit better. So that whole thing has been born out of the workplace, where eventually it's reported and measured, but actually it's hitting society every day, and no more have we experienced it than the last 6 months with COVID. And I think it's a real topical thing just now, Keith.
Phenomenal, the way that the technology has changed over the years. I remember the days of the first digital watches that came along, and great chunky things. And it's incredible to think that, all these years later, well, not that many years later, we're now able to gather all this information just from the equivalent device, albeit just progressed no end. Just going back to the journey that B-Secur's made, obviously a great deal's happened because you've developed these fantastic, cool technologies, as you say. But tell us a bit about going back to the genesis of the idea. And you mentioned that these guys in Belfast had come up with this original idea of looking at ECG as a bioauthentication method. B-Secur is now based in Belfast. I suspect that's a thing of immense pride from your point of view. So why Belfast? I mean, I've been to your offices. They're great. They're in the historical Titanic Quarter. You're part of the regeneration of Belfast and the great strides it's made over the last 10 or so years. It's all very cool. You've got the Game of Thrones set across the road, which is, great for anybody to look at as well. Tell us a bit about what it means to you to be in Belfast.
Yeah, well, I left nigh on 30 years ago. And 6 years ago, when I was looking for a home for B-Secur, and ultimately my requirement was this: where can I get the best talent and the best place to build B-Secur as a company? And I did a European search for a CTO, Chief Technology Officer, which was my core role, the person who would really prove this technology out. And I was directed to 2 areas in the world, one of which was in Europe, that had the sort of skills that I needed. One was Toronto in Canada, which isn't in Europe, obviously, and the other was Belfast, Northern Ireland. And it related to cardiology first and foremost. For various reasons, those two regions have become real hubs and centres of excellence worldwide. The Northern Ireland scenario dates back to the Troubles and incidents of trauma, where a lot of leading heart specialists came through and cardiologists came through Belfast. And the universities today push out quite a lot of computer scientists. They push out quite a lot of medical people who specialize in cardiology. So in Belfast, you will see a number of companies that specialize in the area of technology related to cardiology. And it was that upon which I went back to Belfast and decided to build our technology headquarters, essentially. It does bring me a lot of pride. I've learned a lot because the place has changed since 30 years ago. And even 6 years ago, it wasn't as shiny as it is today. It really has become a shining light. I needed an ecosystem to be able to build my business. I couldn't just be sat in a warehouse. So we sit alongside GCHQ approved Centre for Secure IT based in Belfast, Titanic Quarter. That is part of University of Ulster and Queen's University spin out. And that was really important, where I would get some talent and some resource from. The building we reside in today is the Innovation Centre. So it's almost like a WeWork for startups. And that has been a brilliant environment for me to bounce off other people. We were a blank page 6 years ago. We had no employees. I was the first employee. We have 37 employees today. And we've been able to do it off the talent that exists from two incredible universities, plus the broader ecosystem that has been built over many, many years in Belfast. So yeah, I am very proud of it. We've relocated people who we've recruited into Europe and England, for example, over to Northern Ireland, and they're so wonderfully surprised by the place, not just in terms of how easy it is to work, but the benefits it can bring. A really good point, and an example for startup environment is, we take investor money, we're an investor-led company, and we need to make every penny stretch as far as it can. In Belfast, you can do that much better than you can in other cities around the UK that I've looked at, certainly London, Edinburgh, Manchester, etc. It's a much more cost-effective and much better talent from my perspective for my business. So that's really taken us there. So very, very proud of that. Now, we are dealing with world class. We won't have customers in Northern Ireland as B-Secur. So we've got to be very, very mindful that we're an island, yet we got to act, operate, behave, and deliver as a world-class company to some of the biggest technology companies on the planet. And I've been able to do that extremely successfully from Northern Ireland, and I'll continue to do so.
Great to hear. And I believe you've got ambitions in terms of making B-Secur a landmark representative of the North of Ireland as well. So what are your plans in that regard?
You can't be a growth company or a startup without using the billion number. But I decided actually we'll go one bigger than that. We're going trillion. So our goal in B-Secur is to be actively managing 1 trillion heartbeats per day. Okay. Today, you don't get many heartbeats in the UK's NHS system even to be managed. Nowhere near that number in the whole of the system. But what I need is 100 million customers using devices that B-Secur software is using. And I can do that in one fell swoop with a small number of countries in the world. I'll give you a very good example. If you look at China right now, a small company by the name of Alibaba have a health data platform. They've got about 450 million local users on it. And they are craving a technology like ours that will allow doctors live in real time to understand how well you are in your home. Now, if we're to switch on that service in that country, I can easily surpass processing 1 trillion heartbeats per day. And you start to understand the scale of this as you get out there. Keith, you will beat about 103,000 heartbeats today alone, right? We just don't have that data open to us in the world. If we understood that, I could proactively manage your health. I could potentially even preventatively manage some health conditions that we would foresee. So it's a huge ambition. I get it. But in the computing world of today, getting our technology into devices and then starting to manage that in the cloud, which is our other go-to-market mechanism, we start to be able to manage large volumes of data from individuals, ECG capture, and it can do enormous things for us.
Sounds incredible. So With these ambitions you've got now, just talk us through how you got from this idea to where you are now. I say that because, I have the pleasure as a patent attorney of seeing lots of great ideas that inventors have. Often what I feel is that inventors lack appreciation of having had a great idea, how they're going to get that to market and how they're actually going to make some money out of it. And they seem to think that the job's done once they've come up with the idea. It all seems to me there's a lot more to it than that. So tell us a bit about how you got from having the technology and having the idea to actually getting to the point at which money's coming through the door.
Okay, it feels like a really long journey. However, it's been exciting. I have reached out to all of my friends over the years to help guide me through this journey. I came from the world of corporate, so I didn't start in those days with a blank piece of paper, and money was generally available to deliver on projects. So we started from scratch. My sort of thesis around building a company is you need to have really good technology. It needs to be unique, it needs to be different, and it needs to be excellent. You need to have a world-class team if we're going to take the ambition that I'm seeking for B-Secur. And you need to have turnover. So the 3 T's, as I call it, the last one relates to commercial viability. I see an awful lot of ideas out there that cannot be commercialized or have not been commercialized, and herein lies the opportunity. So I've used those 3 pillars throughout my last 5.5, 6 years. The first key thing for me was to do it properly, was to raise investment, which would enable me to do other things. We went to private investors in the UK to begin with. I went to my own with my PowerPoint deck and a working prototype of the technology. Got lucky with a private investor in London who's been extremely supportive of us throughout, and that has progressed on to other private investors and institutional venture capital firms. We've now done 5 raises. It's a perpetual thing. That's one key thing here. And what you do is I raise a bit of money. We prove the technology to an extent. We build assets in the company, which includes IP, where you guys come in, and then we go and raise more money. It took 4 years before we started to turn any revenue. And that is a return on investment that not many investors in the UK are familiar with. It's a very common theme in the US. There's a lot more risk reward taken perhaps to deeper technologies in the US, but we tend to see less of that behavior over here until recent years. And I'm very pleased to say that I've managed to get some venture capital firms on board to back us now that do see that longevity, that patient capital that's required. It's something that the British Business Bank talk a lot about in the UK. And I'm glad that they do, because other countries are investing heavily in technology from their domains. So this was never going to be an easy project, but the money enabled me to recruit and find the world's best in their respective regions, technology-wise, commercially. Again, we're building a new technology that's never existed before, so we have to sell it to the world as well. So all of those things came about, and a really big part of that is building our assets as we go along. We're only as valuable as the assets that somebody wished to pay for us for, and that includes our people, technology in part. And now you guys have been helping us a huge amount from an IP perspective. It's an asset. It's a big part of our assets as we go to market.
Tell us a bit about the role that IP's played in the journey. So you said you've gone through a sort of stepwise process there where you've got some investment, you've built up some technology, you've looked at protecting that or building some IP around that. Has that been pretty much how it's evolved, in this a step at a time, build things up and then go on to the next step?
Yes, it has, Keith. It is a step at a time. However, the importance of IP shouldn't be underestimated here. I kind of have the view of the world that there isn't too many things left in the world to be invented from scratch, but it's how they're used and how they're commercialized, which is going to be absolutely crucial to us. We have been able, as an early stage company, to get investment because of the strength of our patents. The defensibility around our technology, the protection around our technology is really, really key. But you, as an individual, Keith, educated me 3 years ago that the word patent is only one aspect of IP. And it was something I didn't appreciate. I was constantly spending more and more money on patents and patent submissions, some of which take many years to come through the process. And that's interesting. It's good. But there's a downside of patents, which is as soon as you do submit a patent, some of your secrets, some of your formula are known to the world, and it then can be copied. So we're the small company in Northern Ireland doing technology that the world's largest technology companies in the world are very interested in. And we somehow got to protect ourselves against people who have extremely deep pockets. So we've started to balance that IP journey through your help, from just patents and raising patents when we can, to a governance piece that we put into our business. We've created this invention board, which you sit on, and some of our technologists and some other very bright people from around the world, to create IP that we either patent at the right time or we store as know-how. And that expertise has become as valuable to our investors and to our customers in recent years. And it's something I just didn't appreciate. The topic of IP is much, much broader than the topic of patents. It's very old school to talk about it in the form of patents only. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and of course you're in an interesting area in patent terms anyway, because your inventions, as you said earlier on, are very much centred around signal processing and software, which throws up its own interesting situations. So I think that's something that we've looked at as well. And as you say, we've looked at the possibility of using trade secrets and know-how to protect those inventions, some of which possibly wouldn't have been patentable or may have struggled with the patent system because of the approach to software inventions. And also we've looked at the downsides of the inevitable publication that comes with patents and giving away more than you gain by going through the patent process. So I think, it's fair to say that we've come up with a sort of mixed approach, which seems to have worked well. Just moving on from that, tell us a bit about what your advice would be to anybody in the same position. Hopefully there's people listening to this who've had some great ideas. I know there's a lot of people out there and are listening to your journey and thinking how fun and exciting it sounds. And it does. And it's quite clear the enthusiasm and the fun that you're having along the way. And I don't mean that in a trivial way. I mean in a substantial way. So if you were talking to the next Alan, who's hopefully sitting there listening to us now, what would you say to him or her in terms of what to do with a great idea they've got?
Yeah, so there's an awful lot of things to juggle. It's not a quiet life that I've chosen, but it's extremely interesting and extremely rewarding. If you're up for the challenge, the three fundamentals I think remain for any business in the IP space, especially around technology, are just that. Consider all aspects of the technology, including IP. Consider all aspects of the team and how to build the right team for you. You may be selling to a local market, so that's very, very different to what I'm trying to achieve. And consider the right aspects of turnover or a business model that's right for the optics of your business. Put that all together, and that is a formula for raising investment. A lot of people don't wish to raise investment or may not need to. We did, because of the deep-pocketed nature and therefore the reward which we wish to get out of this. So all of that is combined. Is a very complex story, but there's an awful lot of material out there to read about that. I would definitely recommend getting to the best you can afford at that time. And we've had to come through this journey with IP as well. I believe we're now with the world-class company that can help us on our IP for all our circumstances around the world, not just locally in the UK, in Murgitroyd. So you guys have great experience in the technology sector, in tackling new, mature ways of looking at IP, trade secrets, and so on and so forth. But you also can touch any corner in any country of the world. And that for me was my optimal. I couldn't have achieved that. I wouldn't have known what you guys could have brought to me 5 years ago until I got into it. So there was a stepping stone of getting to that point where I really was having to come on board with someone who knew my customers, my competitors, and Murgitroyd seemed to know that. So we've reached that point. We've upgraded all of our support services, as it were, our accountants, our lawyers, etc., to make us world-class, because that's what our product is. And I think Murgitroyd formed part of that partnership, part of that team, and we feel like we're in a good place right now. There's no end of new stuff to be done, and I'm constantly reaching out to you, Keith, to look for new aspects of value that we can attribute to the business from IP, and we'll do more of that in 2021. It's a good time for technology. There's less places for people to put their money in the world with what's happening in the world, sadly. However, for me and B-Secur, it probably affords me the chance to bring technology to the world that can help people in other ways. And that's what keeps me going every day. So there's a great motivation, great passion to do it. And you guys are crucial to that. Without IP, I am not investable as a company. And we need to keep that going through 2021.
Well, it goes without saying, we're just delighted to be part of such an exciting story. As patent attorneys, we're all techies at heart, so just being involved in that cool tech is great. But seeing you evolve and grow and succeed in the way you have, it is just fantastic. So long may it continue. Alan, thank you very much for your time. Delighted as ever to speak to you. And as I say, I hope you have continued success, and we look forward to the 1 trillion heartbeats landmark.
Thank you, Keith. Really good to talk to you today.
Thanks for your time today. We hope you found today's podcast valuable. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. So until the next time, goodbye.
Our business is founded on trust and collaboration. The subjects we choose for our podcasts are topical and informative. We are always looking for suggestions for new topics for discussion, so if there's an area of IP that you're keen to understand better, please drop us a line at innovation.talks@murgitroyd.com.